How are things looking after this surprisingly upbeat night for Democrats?
I feel like that voters are starting to erect a new guardrails for democracy, right? It's not perfect, it's not complete yet, but when I think back to Wednesday, November 9th, 2016, to Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, and a lot of carnage in between, a lot of erosion of rights, a lot of pain, a lot of trouble, but when you look at the results, like in a state like Michigan, for example, someplace I spent a lot of time in. The Democratic governor there not only won, she won by 10 percentage points, which is even more than she was projected to win. She got more votes this time than last time. More people voted in 2022 than voted in 2018. The fight there to protect abortion rights, plus fight on the economy, plus protect democracy. The candidates there, from the House, Alyssa Slotkin to Gretchen Whitmer to Mallory McMorrow, who's so good about this, they made a complete argument, and voters rewarded that. So, but like Carrie Lake may become governor of Arizona tonight, so it's not this is not a straight line.
Jen, let's talk about Michigan for a second. We're talking about Republican violence. We're talking about MAGA extremism. What did Michigan voters see? What did they hear for the last couple of years? Extremists talking about plotting to kidnap the governor, put her on trial, and possibly kill her. That extremism was there. The extremism on abortion. And listen, most Americans, they support the Mississippi law, which is 15 weeks. That's where most Americans are. But where Gretchen Whitmer's opponent was again literally talking about a 14-year-old rape victim who was raped by an uncle, being a perfect example of why that girl and her family and her pastor and her doctor and her mental health counselor should have no say in what she does. The extremism there led, and the Wall Street Journal editorial page that Willie's brought up talks about it. The extremism led, I won't even call it the Michigan miracle, because it was just a response to the crazy weirdos, freaks, and insurrectionists in Michigan, and it caused a political revolution. Again, let's say this. In an off-year election that historically should have been horrible for them, with inflation incredibly high, which should have been horrible for them, with fears over crime rising, and yet in all of that, they won everything in Michigan, in one of the biggest swing states in America.
Both houses of the legislature.
Both houses of the legislature.
For the first time in 40 years. I remember I talked to Whitmer staff earlier in the year and said, do you all think that you have a chance of flipping the House or Senate? And they're like, maybe in a few years, not this year, not this time. And it's a majority of seats on the Supreme Court. It's, governor, Secretary of State, the attorney general, all which happen to be women, by the way. It's the women that won the House races there. Alyssa Slotkin in a really tough race. She pulls it out too. Talk about the personification of everything terrible in America. Gretchen Whitmer's gone through COVID, armed COVID protests. Remember the protests about the lockdown started there, right. The assassination plot.
By the way, inside the legislature, they're bringing AR-15s inside of the legislature. Memo to Republicans. Memo to Republicans. You bring AR-15s inside of legislatures and you scream at law enforcement officers? Don't go well. Right, Jim?
Yeah, and they just, I was there. I was there later in September when more armed protests showed up in 2020. And then Dixon, who the Republicans wanted, she was the candidate that they wanted. She thought she was good. That answer on abortion just put her in the box from the beginning. And she tried to recover from it. She actually ended up being a good campaigner. I spent some time with her on Sunday night. She was good. She was Glenn Youngkin kind of good, but. To overcome what people knew about her on abortion, plus that atmosphere in Michigan, it was just, it was too much. But I also don't want to take away from how good the candidates were, because they really argued their case well, made a difference for voters.
All right, Jen, thank you so much. Ed Luce, Thank you so much. And of